Hello everyone, we are back with part 4 of Lestat's life story. I'm sorry guys, I know I always leave you waiting longer than you should be waiting for the continuation of Lestat's life, but honestly, the creation of these videos are so draining on me, with the reading of the entire book in a short space of time, followed by dissecting it and creating a script. But anyway, it's done. Now we are going to enter one of the strangest and most introspective chapters of Lestat's entire existence, up until this point anyway. Tale of the Body Thief. This isn't just another Lestat vampire adventure guys. This is a story of identity, temptation, betrayal, and most notably transformation. So in this novel we find Lestat being his overly dramatic self and questioning the point of his existence, coming across an opportunity that most vampires, well, probably all vampires, would never dream of experiencing again. The chance at regaining their mortality. So let's get straight into it. So Lestat is still recovering emotionally and spiritually from the events of the Queen of the Damned, and he begins Tale of the Body Thief in a deep state of malice. Though powerful, adored, and infamous amongst vampires, he's haunted. Claudia's death continues to torment him, and if you recall his last conversation with Louis, he highlights what a mistake he made to create Claudia so young. He also really misses Louis, but more so Louis' struggle with the love and pain of his own mortal existence. Lestat gets enjoyment out of that, and most notably, he's profoundly bored and disillusioned with life as a vampire. He feels hollow. He's become a creature that's lost its story. He was no longer the Lestat who was once driven by curiosity, rebellion, and hunger for meaning. He sees himself as nothing more than a wanderer, which is dangerous because vampires who fall into such a mindset tend to lose their minds along the way, forgetting who they are completely, like a supernatural reset button. We also just need to have a look at Cayman for a perfect example of this. So Lestat narrates the story quite sarcastically, while also grieving. He's tasted power beyond comprehension, communed with ancient beings like Akasha, and stood at the center of an apocalyptic event. Yet now with no new enemy to face and no grand real purpose to fulfill, the silence of immortality just completely deafens him. His mansion is a mausoleum of ineffective luxuries. His nights are filled with excess, lavish meals he cannot eat, beautiful clothes that he doesn't really give a crap about, and music that no longer stirs his soul. He does play the piano for himself, but rather in solitude, trying to rekindle some of his lost passion, but nothing satisfies him. He even begins to think about death, not with actual defiance but with a twisted kind of curiosity. So he decides to test his limits and he flies directly towards the sun. Literally, he just rises high above the clouds in the early morning and his body instantly begins to burn in the rays of the sun. It's an astonishing and desperate act. He wants to test the limits of his own immortality, but perhaps more truthfully, he wants to feel something, anything. The pain is just, it's unbearable. So his flesh chars, his skin, it blackens, his vision blurs, but he doesn't die. No doubt his experience with Akasha's blood aiding him on that one. Anyway, he falls back to earth, weakened and scorched, but as I said, alive. His regenerative powers slowly heal him, leaving him horrified, but still fascinated. Even the sun, the great destroyer of vampires, cannot truly end him. So guys, this moment marks a turning point. Having survived even the sun, Lestat is forced to reckon with a brutal truth. He is trapped in this immortal body. He's trapped in time, he's trapped in memory, in solitude. The joy, the chaos, the romance of being a vampire. What was once, you could say, an open field of possibility has now become an inescapable cage. And then, just as he goes back to the self-pitying Lestat, the universe throws him a curveball. One that promises a way out. An escape from the cage, an escape from immortality. a second chance at human life. So this second chance, this offer will come from a mysterious figure named Raglan James, a smooth-talking man who enters Lestat's life with all the flair of a salesman, a magician, and the confidence of someone who you just know as a reader has underlying deceit. So he first makes contact subtly. He sends out psychic impressions and strange dreams to Lestat, and when he finally appears in person, it's in a lavish hotel suite, the perfect setting for a deal with the devil. James claims to be a mortal with supernatural talents, a sorcerer, a master of spiritual displacement. He's developed a technique to leave his own body and inhabit another. He boasts of using this ability to live dozens of lives, stealing youth, beauty, wealth, and experiences from others like a predator in plain sight. Now this leaves Lestat both intrigued and also highly suspicious. Of course he doesn't trust this man and what he says, but he also can't deny the temptation. It's Lestat after all. So anyway, Lestat's curiosity, it battles with his own caution. On one hand, he already knows that Raglan James is dangerous. He's been around long enough to know who's dangerous and who isn't. But the Talamasca, the secret society that studies the paranormal, actually have records of Raglan James, and David Talbot strongly warns Lestat that James is a known con man and occult thief. He was expelled from the Talamasca for unethical practices and mental instability. This really should be all Lestat needs to know in order to make a decision on whether to continue dealing with this man. It's very clear that the evidence screams walk away. However, Lestat, as reckless as he always is, finds himself enthralled. James appeals to his boredom, he appeals to his loneliness, and, most notably, he appeals to Lestat's vanity. He flatters Lestat's desire to understand mortality, to suffer and feel and ache like humans do. And James promises that this will just be temporary, like it's a brief adventure, maybe a vacation from immortality. But Lestat just doesn't jump in yet. He goes and speaks to David Talbot again, not just as a source of knowledge, but this time as a real, true friend, because David is the only mortal friend that Lestat trusts at this point. And David does listen to what he has to say, and he helps Lestat analyze the risks. He warns Lestat of the dangers of spiritual detachment and the psychological damage this could cause. He pleads with Lestat not to do it. However, as we all know, with Lestat, it's pretty clear that despite David's warning earlier about Raglan's history with the Talamasca, in addition to highlighting the risks, Lestat had actually always known what he was going to do. He wants to feel pain. He wants to feel cold. He wants to know what it's like to sleep, to eat, to be weak again. Not because he hates being a vampire, but because he can't remember what it truly means to be human anymore. He doesn't remember what it feels like to be alive. So James and Lestat then negotiate the terms. The meeting place is set, a hotel room, secure and neutral. James explains the process is like a ritual. Both bodies must be present, the minds, the souls will both switch, and the rules are very simple. Switch bodies for a short time and then switch back. The naivety of the question, what could possibly go wrong, certainly comes to mind as a reader outside of this story. But obviously as a reader we can see it's a setup from a mile away, but with terms agreed, Lestat prepares to walk into the trap, a decision that will basically unravel everything he believes he knows about power, identity and, most importantly, mortality. Lestat, meanwhile, is a storm of conflicting emotions, curiosity, excitement and an undying fear he refuses to admit. The two individuals face each other and the ritual begins. It's not a dramatic ceremony, guys, with candles and chanting and darkness and all of that. It's more disturbingly clinical. James uses an ancient method involving talismans and a psychic focus. There's a huge surge of energy, a blinding moment of separation, and then silence. Lestat opens his eyes in a new body. For the first time in over 2 centuries, he takes his first breath as a human. The air is sharp in his lungs. He feels the sluggish beat of a mortal heart in his chest. There's a dull ache in his muscles, a strange heaviness in his limbs. He's cold, but not the kind of cold a vampire ignores, but the true chill of human vulnerability. And then comes the flood: hunger, thirst, fatigue, and nausea. Lestat stumbles to the bathroom, looks at his reflection, and barely recognizes himself. He's in the body of a man in his early 30s, sickly, pale, and with track marks and trembling hands. A far cry from his immortal perfection. He orders food, real food, and devours it with a blend of awe and discomfort. He gorges himself on everything: bacon, eggs, pancakes, coffee. The sensory experience is overwhelming. It's like an overload. The taste, the texture, the fullness. But soon after comes vomiting and cramping. The body is too damaged to handle indulgence, and the reality sets in quickly. This isn't a dream. This isn't romantic. This body is deteriorating, and Raglan James knew that. He lied. Lestat rushes back to the meeting place, demanding James switch back. But shock, James is gone. His belongings are missing, the room is empty. The only evidence that he was ever there is Lestat's own vampire body, now gone, walking the earth under someone else's control. Lestat realizes the horrifying truth. He's been robbed of his immortality, or so he believes, and James has no intention of giving it back. And this is the issue that I had with Lestat when I read how he felt after the whole thievery of his body. In the hours that follow, Lestat experiences panic like never before. He can't call for help because who would believe him? He can't use his powers because he has none. He tries to feed, to connect psychically, but there's nothing. He's trapped in a body that isn't his, fragile and burning out fast. And now he is hunted, not by vampires, but by the brutal simplicity of the human condition. What began as an adventure becomes a descent into a total nightmare. The vampire brat prince is now a man, and this man, guys, is dying. Lestat has been utterly screwed. His mind, however, is still vibrant and sharp, but now it's trapped in a vessel that stumbles, sweats, and aches. His first instincts are to flee, to find sanctuary somewhere, but the human world is indifferent. Many of us know that. His wealth, his reputation, all of his connections, all belonged to Lestat the vampire. He is a gaunt, trembling stranger, and he commands zero authority, guys. He's no longer feared, he's no longer adored, he's basically invisible, which is a lot worse a fate than Lestat believed he was previously living. His pride, for example, which is so central to who he was as a person, now begins to erode. Now he becomes paranoid. Every mirror is a confrontation. Every human breath is a reminder. Even the act of sleeping becomes terrifying because it's a helpless surrender to unconsciousness. He dreams vivid, feverish hallucinations, haunted by the thought of Raglan James inside his own immortal body, feeding, flying, living. He checks into cheap hotels, he pawns off valuables and scavenges for sustenance. The humiliation is relentless. For Lestat, who once commanded the attention of empires and gods, to now barter, you could say, for clean water and even an aspirin, is a descent beyond anything he ever imagined. In desperation, Lestat turns to David Talbot once more, and using the last scraps of his identity and influence, basically what's left of him, he manages to convince David of the truth. And at first, David is skeptical. After all, Lestat is totally unrecognizable, but the voice, the eyes, the mind, they are unmistakably the vampire he once knew. And David is horrified, guys, not just by the circumstances, but by the possibility that such a thing is even possible, because Raglan James was once thought to be a rogue occultist, and now he's been proven to be something so much worse. He's a predator of the spirits, he's a thief of essence. So anyway, David takes Lestat in, providing shelter, clothing and medical attention, and together they begin to investigate James's trail. David leans on his Talamasca contacts while Lestat struggles to stay alive inside this crumbling body. Every single day is a battle. He wakes up with headaches, nausea, cravings, all the byproducts of the addiction that still lingers in the flesh. And Lestat also seeks out Louis. Hoping for understanding, maybe even salvation, he presents himself to his old companion. But Louis is cold, distant and restrained. He does listen, but he does not offer to help. To Louis, this is the price of arrogance. Lestat begs him to turn him back into a vampire, but Louis refuses. The rejection cuts Lestat deeper than he ever expected, and it confirms a terrible truth, that he is truly alone. Not even Louis would help him. And despite this additional setback, his thirst for survival and revenge ignites, which ironically is what Lestat truly wanted to feel all along, but in a human body. He won't waste away in a borrowed human shell. He's not going to let that happen. He is going to find Raglan James. He is going to reclaim what was stolen from him. But to do that, he must endure the limits of the human body and learn how to fight without super strength, without super speed, but most importantly without fear. So even though he's human now, he's still Lestat. And that means, guys, he's far from defeated. Now begins the hunt for Raglan James. With David Talbot as his only ally, Lestat uses every ounce of cunning he has left to track the man who stole his body. James, now in Lestat's immortal shell, is living extravagantly, drawing attention in the supernatural underground by behaving recklessly, killing without discretion, and displaying powers that no fledgling vampire should ever possess. David and Lestat follow the trail from New Orleans to New York, and eventually to Miami, where James has settled temporarily. Each step closer brings more horror. Rumors of a vampire who walks in the sun, who drains entire families without remorse, who brags of immortality as though it were just a toy. To Lestat, it's not just a betrayal, it's a defilement. James is abusing his body, desecrating the dignity of everything Lestat once was. The world sees a monster and they think it's him. To be honest, guys, Lestat was no picnic with his behaviour, but he did have a sense of dignity that, as I mentioned, was being defiled. And as they gather intelligence, Lestat is forced to confront just how little he truly understood James. He had thought him a petty con artist, but James is something darker. He's a true parasite, a being who just doesn't want to escape death, but to consume identity itself. The irony is that it's not lost on Lestat, because he, who once took human lives so easily, now finds himself begging to reclaim his own. He sees the consequences of reckless immortality not from the predator's eyes, but from the victim's. And it changes him, it hardens him, but it also clarifies Lestat's purpose. They finally locate James in a high-rise condo, living in opulence and decadence, and Lestat watches him from afar. He's looking at his own face, his own movements, his own charm, and now it's worn by another. It's like somebody in Lestat's clothes. The confrontation is brief but intense. Lestat, weak and mortal, manages to infiltrate James's inner circle using his wit and with the help of David. When they finally meet face to face, it's kind of surreal. James is of course amused and almost condescending, and he taunts Lestat, boasting about how much he enjoys the body more than Lestat ever did. And if I'm honest, he has a point. He appreciates his new body because of the body he was previously in, which is what it's taken for Lestat to now realise the same thing. Lestat pleads with him, not for sympathy but for reason. He appeals to James's ego, trying to lure him into a rematch of sorts, a second switch. But James is no longer interested in trading. He has now tasted power, and he has no intention of giving it up. And the meeting ends with violence because James attacks Lestat, not to kill him but just to humiliate him, to remind him that he is human and that he is weak. And he throws Lestat from the building, nearly killing him. But as always, Lestat survives, this time just barely. And that near-death experience becomes a turning point. He realizes that asking won't work. I don't know why he asked in the first place. This time it has to be taken back, with force, with strategy. But most importantly guys, with help. David, now fully committed, begins researching the original ritual, hoping to find some way to replicate it, or perhaps even hijack it, but time is running out. So anyway, Lestat's mindset changes from hunting to thievery. He must now become the thief, while the original thief must be stopped, no matter the cost. David now finds himself a participant in the most bizarre supernatural case of his entire career. So he digs into ancient texts, Talamasca archives, and occult manuscripts, retracing James's path through forbidden knowledge. The ritual James used was no illusion. It was real, it was powerful, and replicable, though highly dangerous. David learns that the spell requires both participants to be present, a precise alignment of mental, spiritual, and temporal energy, and a space saturated with psychic potential. As Lestat slowly regains strength in his failing human body, David coaches him through mental exercises to maintain his spirit's cohesion. And if they attempt the ritual, and Lestat's will falters even for a moment, he could be lost forever. Anyway, they prepare their own trap, just like James originally did with Lestat. So with careful manipulation, false messages, and the seduction of James's ego, they lure him into believing Lestat, now broken and pitiful, wants to surrender, that he's finally willing to accept James's superiority, that he's ready to talk, maybe even give up the chase. The location is set, a ruined chapel just outside Miami, long abandoned but still saturated with psychic residue, a perfect arena for the final confrontation. James arrives, confident as smug. That is something we're all familiar with. He's still drunk on the power that he's stolen, and Lestat, trembling and gaunt, plays his role perfectly. He grovels, flatters, and distracts. James never even notices David in the shadows, preparing the spell, and as the ritual begins, time seems to freeze. The psychic pressure builds like a storm, and for a moment, all three men are suspended between worlds. But Lestat, grounded by his suffering, his hunger to live, but the wrath of being violated, focuses heavily with unbreakable clarity. And in a blinding flash, the switch is made. Lestat is back in his body. He inhales, and the world floods in again. His strength returns, his senses sharpen, his mind crackles with immortal fire. He's whole again, but the experience has changed him. The power now feels both a blessing and a burden. Meanwhile, James, disorientated and furious, enters the body of a young, healthy human man. He screams and curses at them both. Despite having a healthy body, he believes that occupying David's body will be more beneficial. But before he can even get close to David, Lestat kills Raglan, quickly and quietly. There's no satisfaction in it, only the cold necessity of justice, Revenge. It had to be done. With Raglan James dead and his own body reclaimed, Lestat should feel victorious. But standing in the ruins of the chapel, surrounded by echoes of pain and betrayal, he instead feels something else, an emptiness. He returns to feeling hollow. The experience has not cleansed him. More so, it's scarred him, it's damaged him. And as David Talbot surveys the aftermath, Lestat looks at him not just with gratitude but with something far more complex. David, still aging, still human and still bound to a world of dust and decay, represents the very frailty Lestat has just escaped. Yeah, you know where I'm going with this one, guys. And in that moment, the vampire prince makes a fateful yet very selfish decision. Without asking, without warning, he pulls David's soul from his old body and gives him the one vacated by James. Lestat forces his blood upon David. He overpowers his old friend, holding him tightly as he bleeds into him. David resists, horrified, confused, but Lestat is relentless. He believes he is giving David a gift: youth, power, freedom from age and death. And David's transformation is violent and very fast and immediate. He awakens in a young, strong, flawless body, now a fledgling vampire. But the moment of rebirth is not joyful, guys. It's more so one of betrayal. Because David had always been Lestat's moral compass, his confidant, the voice of wisdom that kept Lestat grounded. And now he's something else. He's something remade without consent, a complete and total violation. The consequences of this act ripple instantly because David is done with Lestat on every level. But Lestat brushes off the outrage. He sees it as a mercy, perhaps even a reward. He tells himself, not David, he tells himself, guys, that he did it out of love, out of gratitude, out of a desire to save David from a fate he never deserved. But beneath all of the lies is the truth. Lestat could not bear to lose another companion to the slow death of time. It's the same thing what happened with Louis. Lestat made Claudia so Louis would not leave him. And David, now immortal, just exits the scene. He leaves Lestat in silence. So in the aftermath of everything, the body theft, the ritual, the betrayal of David, Lestat seeks the one soul that he still longs for, that he has always longed for above everything: Louis. He returns to New Orleans, to the shadows of their old home. The city is still a combination of beauty and decay, and in Lestat's mind it mirrors the weight that he now carries. He finds Louis quietly feeding by the river, and the reunion is quite cautious. It's nothing dramatic or anything like that, but it's more so a mournful meeting of old souls who once had a very strong, beautiful connection. And Lestat does not apologize. He simply sits beside Louis and tells him the story. Every detail, every mistake, every moment of agony and humiliation. Louis listens in silence and his face is quite unreadable. But the tale ends not really with triumph but with sorrow. It's a sad story, because the vampire who once sought to conquer eternity now just merely seeks understanding. Lestat wants to understand more. He still doesn't know who he truly is after all of this. He just knows he never wants to experience humanity ever again. And Louis, ever the philosopher, as we know, he finally speaks. And he acknowledges Lestat's suffering, but he reminds him that suffering is not penance, nor is survival redemption. So they talk as the night deepens, of death, of time, and then they leave it all behind. Anyway, Lestat leaves before dawn, alone. The pain of what he's done to David, to himself, it still lingers. He does feel some guilt, but something within him has definitely changed. The prince, the brat prince, once driven by ego and craving, now carries something much more quieter: humility. So guys, with that being said, that is Lestat's Life, Part 4, Tale of the Body Thief. Now I know I skipped ahead and done Memnoch the Devil for Part 3. To be honest, it was just a mistake. So I had to go back and do Tale of the Body Thief. Let me know what you think of this book down below. I personally believe, in my own opinion guys, don't want to offend anybody who likes this book. I like the book and I like it that much. I believe it's the last kind of great piece that Anne has written, up until maybe The Vampire Armand. But yeah, let me know what you think in the comment section below.